I was even thinking not to put up an agenda, but I want to do it because I want to give a little bit of framework. Alex was talking in the morning, and I think he did a magnificent job because he was pointing out that there is a huge business requirement, and I've seen that myself as well. And that business requirement is the interoperability of systems. And that starts already, I mean, he was talking mostly about company to company, but it already starts in the companies, in the enterprises. I've worked with clients that have thousands, up to 10,000 IT systems just inside the company. And of course, there is no way they all communicate to each other and are well connected and seamless flows everywhere. That's the dream we have, but it's not happening. Interoperability is the big business requirement, and I want to start from there. Alex also touched that standardization means also decentralization. The autonomy of each single entity is a key factor in achieving interoperability. I'm going to touch that as well. And eventually, I want to guide you to the Internet of Actors. The Internet of Actors for us is a way how to achieve practically, this is the way to build software so that software is interoperable. So that was my whole speech in a nutshell. Now let's go a little bit more into details. I want to start with a framework the European Union came up with. The European Union spent a lot of money in identifying what does interoperability actually mean. And they found a very nice structure which I want to use here. They are saying that on a very base level, we're talking about technical interoperability. There we really have the basic technical agreements we're talking about. And when we talk about like a network of communications, we talk about the nodes and we talk about the edges, the connections between those entities. That's this level. We have a second level that builds up on it, which is the semantic interoperability. There we make sure that we have all the requirements properly described and specified so that we can actually use this technology and achieve this interoperability. Above that, we have the organizational interoperability and the legal interoperability. Here it's about the participants, how do they interact, what rules do they have, what guidelines, what standardizations do they have to follow to enable that. I will use this structure on a later slide. I want to introduce the Internet of Actors and then we map it back again. How does the Internet of Actors fulfill this framework? And spoiler alert, we go beyond. Let's have a look at the historical perspective, and that's the slide that Alex already had up this morning. If we go back in time, and we're using the OSI model, there was hardly any standardization, and one layer after the other of the OSI model was slowly but surely standardized and enabled us to build new functionality, to build new software, much more efficient, because this communication standard was established. What we also see is that with the increasing efficiency and the increasing ability of IT, the business requirements were rising too. As soon as you're able to deliver A, they ask for the B. And as soon as you can deliver A and B, they ask for C, B, and A. So you have many more use cases, many more applications, and that goes up exponentially. So if we go now from one stage to the other, Alex was already pointing out that, so the next step, the next logical step is that we also standardize 5, 6, 7 session, presentation, application. And from a pure business perspective, yeah, we want that. We want to achieve this, and we want to have this all standardized so that we can build software much easier, faster, more to the point, interoperable. If I say it like that, I'm not holding I have a dream speech here. It's more, I have a solution and I want you all to work with me on that solution. And I think that what we call interoperability network here, which is the next logical step, I think that the subject-oriented approach can jump in here and deliver that. I have one more slide which is similar to this one. We are now talking about the application level. On the application level, we can have a quick look on how do we actually build software. How did the process of developing software change over the last decades? In the very beginning, there was a huge effort in just developing the IT itself. And the use cases you were able to solve were rather small, simple. Your most effort was with programming and execution. But with the standardization, the programming and execution part became more and more efficient. And you were able to deliver much more in much less time. And you were able to deliver much more complexity and still solve their use cases or solve even more complex use cases. What did happen though is the description of the requirements to understand the actual business use cases, that got more difficult because the use cases got more difficult. Also the transformation, and I understand the transformation, the design, like how do we implement this business case? The design, the modeling, how do we translate these business requirements into an IT language that can actually be programmed and executed. Also that layer got more and more important. So what is happening here, if I run an IT implementation project today, I have a huge effort in understanding the business requirements and the complexity, the dependencies between those requirements. I have a very large effort of mapping what do I have to do to actually fulfill those requirements. The actual programming work, I can use more and more and more standardized work. I can reuse stuff, I can use standard software which is already out there. The actual coding, in a relative sense, is getting less and less. What is here the next step? If I translate the slide from before into this one, the next step must be that this is getting blurry. That we do this together. That my description of requirements actually becomes an executable description. Why do I write everything down in a Word document just to give it the project sponsor and he signs it off, if I can write it down in some tool that is executable right away? That would be my suggestion. Why not doing that? The transformation Why shouldn't that be automated? If I have a nice overview, a nice mapping, a nice model of what I need to do, why not computing right away the execution? And this symbols something else. In many cases, we use the term process management, business process management. Reality shows that it's getting more and more difficult to actually map everything into a process. It turns out that most situations are much more networks than processes. You have many different players, and each of them can communicate with each of them. The communication might be different about different topics. Everyone has its job, but eventually it is one network that has to deliver something. So we want to change that view as well. We're not saying anymore we do process management. We are implementing networks. And that's why we call it Interoperability Network. So what are the requirements from a business perspective? What are the requirements to our interoperability network? We want to use each node, each entity, each software module. We want to make sure that we can multi-use this node. And we're doing that by defining a smart structure how these nodes and connections. We want to achieve that those nodes are autonomous and agile, so that we can, well, if something changes in the network, I don't want to throw away everything. I just want to change this one node. But the rest of the network remains stable. That's what I mean here. Also, and that's a very interesting point, we want to get rid of orchestrating this. We want to choreograph it. In the orchestration, I have one central point, one source of truth, and I'm telling every entity, every node what to do. While with the orchestration, we make every entity smart. Every entity needs to know what's your job, and then it can carry on working. And the picture we have in mind is the orchestration. It's the orchestra, right? You have the conductor in the front who gives the, like, you start now, and you louder. And while with the choreography, you have a group of dancers. They study beforehand. But when they dance, they know what to do. They know what steps to take. And I don't need anyone telling them during the theater what to do. Third bullet point, the business requirements. We want to describe that with simple semantics. We want to take the complexity out there. As you saw in the historic evolution, it is getting more and more important to understand the business context of the implementation. So we want to enable IT-affine business people to actually do this work. And we want to execute right away. I think those are nice requirements. And that would, if we achieve all that, that's a quantum leap for the IT development. I think we agree. How do we want to do that? With the Internet of Actors. For that, we first have to introduce what is an actor. We're talking about smart actors. I mentioned just before that we want to give every entity, every actor, the smartness to know what to do and what to do next. We don't want this orchestration. So we have to make them smart. The smart actor is an independent software module. The important thing is it can connect and communicate with all the other smart actors. For that, we have something we call a role behavior interface. And that works, well, I'm writing worldwide. It can go across enterprises, it can go across borders. There is no reason why to stop at borders. Eventually, the smart actor is an abstract state machine, and therefore a microservice, a smart microservice. We can go in more detail in the technical session, right? Eventually, the smart actor is the smallest unit in our Internet of Actors, in the whole value-added network. We distinguish 3 different actors. We want to give it a little structure. We will have business actors. That's what an end user is facing. A business actor is basically your digital assistant to do something in your daily job. If you're the financial accountant of an insurance company and your job is to create an invoice or to process an invoice, you will find on your screen some actor symbol. Here I can process my invoice, and let's do that. In the background, there will be much more actors working on this. Those might be service actors. Service actors are not visible to the end user. They are executing some logic. They are supporting, in that case, a business actor, but they can run independently and they run fully automatically. A physical actor is basically the digital assistant or the representative, or talk about the wording, but for physical things, for sensors, for physical objects, for actual machines working on stuff. And with those 3 categories of smart actors, we can describe a lot. These actors have to run somewhere. Those actors we execute in the actor sphere, which is basically our operating system for the actors. You can run those actors in several instances. It's an operating system. We're not bound to one. You can have several actor spheres and they can talk as well. That already works too. Just for completeness, that's the operating system. What we are going to do though is, because an actor is a very small unit, the use case one single actor can solve is, from a business perspective, hardly worth mentioning. So what we need to do is, we need to connect different actors, and we have to choreograph how those actors behave together, and which logic to apply, and to actually build a software application out of many small actors. That's our business choreography. Each smart actor is a node of the network we're building. The edges are basically our communications. And eventually, a business choreography consists of many actors and many communications in between those. And they can talk many to many, whatever is necessary. We have a descriptive and executable semantics. We call that the Internet of Actors notation. And eventually, if you look at what the if an actor is the smallest unit, it's like a smart microservice, right? Then what is the business choreography? The choreography then is your software application, or is one use case. It is a certain business logic or procedure. And of course, it can be a cross-company value network. And this is scalable and can get big. Why do I only do that if my vendor can do it too and my client as well, and it could be connected seamlessly? That's the idea of the business choreography. So the Internet of Actor eventually is exactly that. We connect people, we connect machines, we connect software with those self-organizing, agile networks, and we're using the actors for that. Important is that those we work with, those who participate, the people that participate, the communities, including this community with the theoretical, with the academic foundation, the enterprises, they all have to participate. If there is one in the lead driving it, if there's one putting his money in, and that's the person who's speaking where to go, that's exactly what Alex said in the morning, then we're not going to get to this network, to this community. With the Internet of Actors, we ensure that we are interoperable, and that is based on our RBA, on the role behavior interfaces. So what we try to achieve is that the Internet of Actors is basically the new level playing field to develop software. Let's get back to the EU interoperability framework. How does this fit together? We have those 4 layers I introduced in the beginning. The technical interoperability, that is basically our role behavior interface. With that, we ensure the technical interoperability. The semantic interoperability matches our Internet of Actors notation. That's our semantics. The organizational and legal interoperability follow from that. One of the major differences between the European Union's definition and our implementation is that the European Union tries to achieve interoperability step by step, and then eventually we have interoperability. But we are saying we need interoperability in each layer, starting from the ground. And we achieve interoperability here, we achieve interoperability in our semantics, and that way we ensure there is interoperability. I mean, you can organize your organization any way you want, also not interoperable. But it will be simple for you to set your company up in an interoperable way if you have this foundation. If I look at the actors and what different kind of actors we're going to have and what different actors we're going to connect to business choreographies, we will have a base, a foundation that needs to be provided, the infrastructure of the infrastructure basically, which is the role behavior interface, the Internet of Actors notation, which is the actor sphere, which is the definition and standardization of the different types of actors. I was introducing the 3 actors, the business actor, the service actor, the physical actor. Here, down there, we need to really provide the infrastructure. And this is the level where we need everyone to participate, because everything else builds up on that. And we already have to consider here, what does the end user actually need, and do we serve the end user? Does it have value for the end user? Building up on that foundation, we identified 3 tiers. Tier A, we talk about modeling and choreography. We talk about creating actors. Anyone can come and build an actor. And if you use all the standards we're setting and the technology we provide, they are all interoperable. And building actors, and that's in tier A. Tier B, now we're saying domain actors. What we mean with that is, at some point in time, we have to consider what is your use case. Now I'm going to a manufacturer, or I go to an insurance company, or I go to an HR department of some company, and they will have very specific use cases that need very specific actors. That's on the tier 2, tier B. And now you can say who's coding what, who's actually taking care about what. This is an effort down here where I see the community in the lead. We need to build up a community that takes care about the infrastructure. Tier A is basically work where I have seen mostly IT developers, coding actors that do modeling jobs, choreography jobs, that do, like a database request, or like things you need in every application. The domain smart actors, though, now we have specialists already. Now we need someone who knows the HR function, or who knows how controlling works, because now we're getting very specific from a content perspective. So we have specialized providers, or even management consultants, IT consultants. And the tier C is actually, now we're putting many actors, several choreographies together to what we today say is a business application, a software application. That might be done by management consultants, business consultants, who do not code many actors anymore. But they know what actors do I need, how do I have to put them together to actually serve the actual use case at my client. And that builds large choreographies. Now this choreography compares to a business application. I can build a CRM tool, an ERP tool with this methodology. I kind of have to start from scratch again. I have to build all those efforts. I can build it. But I don't have to build the whole ERP system or the whole CRM system. I can just build it piece by piece. Now there's one functionality. And I can provide just a little piece to a larger system. Because I am just building a couple of actors, and some other vendor is building other actors, and then there is another consultancy who puts them together to a larger business application. And that's how the whole community can work together. And in this network setup, in this community setup, eventually it's to the advantage of the end customer. But that's exactly the point. Now I said we can build an ERP system, or we could build a CRM system with that. Why should we do that if we already have it? The advantage, the benefits, eventually are, and Alex in the morning already pointed some of those advantages out. The Internet of Actors can be a democratic alternative We're not in a monopole situation anymore. Today there is one big Amazon, there is one big eBay, there is one big, best case you have two different platforms, but they cannot talk to each other as well. This is a democratic alternative to the platform economy and also to open source or open API initiatives. We allow also with the Internet of Actors that we are automating and we are scalable. We are very agile. As I said before, if something changes in my network, in my, well, I didn't want to use the word process, right? But if there's something like a change in the process, I don't have to replace the whole system. I don't have to work on the whole system. I just replace the one node in my network. And eventually, the avoidance of monopolies is reason enough to do it. If we do this smartly and we provide this infrastructure as a community to everyone who is willing to join and follow our standards, there won't be monopolies in this setting. And still, it works together and it's interoperable. And that alone is a very good reason to do it. So, takeaway, we believe that the diversity, the entrepreneurial diversity and the sovereignty of all the participants, like everyone who's involved in this community, the user, the IT developer, the scientists building up the foundation, that everyone has a sovereign stake in this, and that is the most important. If we don't build it up on that diversity and sovereignty, we will end up with either platforms or monopoles. So what we want to do is we invite all parties to participate in working further on this. And that's participants in science, from an industry perspective, but also from a political perspective. We invite everyone to play an active role in shaping those ideas, bring them forward, and develop the Internet of Actors in something where we push some of the monopolies, I don't want to say out of the market. They are welcome to join too. And they can contribute with a couple of actors as well. And if the actors are good, then they will be used in choreographies. But those monopolies are just one participant, and they have the same rights as all the other participants. That's our vision. And I'm inviting everyone to join in.